First this hour, ahead of the November 8 Anambra governorship election, the Clean Foundation has released its second security threat assessment report, warning that money politics, godfather influence, and misinformation could undermine the polls. In the report, Clean Foundation says the activities of armed groups, hate speech, and unprofessional conduct of security agents remain major threats to peaceful elections. However, the representative of the Inspector General of Police assures voters, political parties, and stakeholders of adequate security during the polls.
People believe that security agencies are largely going to be biased, and we think that this is something to pay attention to. And this is also not unconnected to the issue of professionalism. We also think the weaponization of misinformation is also very big and a critical tool in the hands of those who want to destabilize the system. So it is very key to deal with that. And you know, one thing that is traditional about Anambra is because people have deep pockets. And money is going to play a lot of roles, and that is one of the biggest concerns. Again, the activities of godfatherism, how that played out, and is going to play out in terms of how the entire process also is going to be executed.
The police and other security agencies are going to deploy 5,224 police personnel to man 5,178 polling units within Anambra State. Also provide security at the ward, coalition center, local government coalition center, and the state coalition centers. We have also made all the necessary arrangements to provide security at the INL offices, INL officials, international and local observers, as well as all the law-abiding citizens.
I want to assure you that our men have been trained, and we've already started our deployment to Anambra State. We'll be having a series of in-house capacity building for officers.
They expect to deploy at least 4 personnel across every polling unit. And for us, we think that is confidence enough. And having some level of collaboration, having synergy between security architecture, for me, I think is a very laudable one.
Well, for more on the election security threat assessment report conducted ahead of the 2025 Anambra State governorship election, which holds on November 8, I'm now joined by Dr. Salaudeen Hashim. He's the Director of Programs at the Clean Foundation. Thank you so much for joining us on the news
tonight. Thank you very much for having me.
So this is your second threat assessment, as we understand it.
Yeah.
I think a good place to start would be, what's the difference? Any difference from the first and the second reports?
Yeah, I mean, conflict is dynamic, and we have seen a little bit of some level of migration of threats from some initial LGAs to a new higher threat in other AGLs, like Oka South and some other local governments have been thrown up as new threat areas. And this is also a kudos to the CP, who took our initial recommendation very seriously and had engaged in over 10 to 15 strategic advocacy, peace advocacies in the state, engaging all stakeholders and ensuring that he put every hands on deck. But one thing that is very fundamental is that election security threat does not select its victim. It is very important for every actor to put all hands on deck to ensure that we have a peaceful and stable election. And we have seen very clearly that there are also some level of intersection between what we reported last time and now, and one of which is that people are still afraid. Security system is still heightened. There is tension in the air, but again, stakeholders are doing all that they could to ensure that they stabilize the entire process. Okay,
so that's reassuring. So you have identified the challenge, but you are also seeing some sorts of efforts from stakeholders, is what you're saying.
Absolutely.
Okay, great. You talk about money politics, security threats, of course. What's driving the rise in this? What's driving this threat, particularly money politics? It's not new.
Absolutely.
We've seen this in our elections, whether it's the general election or off-cycle elections. Why is that a particular concern for you in this Anambra election? What are you seeing on ground?
Yeah, I mean, Anambra is very peculiar, and that is because you have a particular state with lots of stakeholders who are able to throw money bags around. And we believe very strongly that it is very important to also begin to look very closely and see how this also further threatened the provisions in the Electoral Act. Yes, there are also ceiling to the amount you can spend during the election, but when everything is up for sale, tendencies are there that that also becomes a recipe for conflict. And that is exactly what we are flagging and hoping that those who have the responsibility to act, for instance, like the EFCC, we are hoping that their financial intelligence and monitoring units would also be deployed on election day, containing and preventing every form of election procurement and commercialization of the ballot. But again, what happens afterwards is the issue. We have seen previous elections where those who engage in the activities of vote buying were actually arrested. But again, what happened eventually? Those are food for thought, but we believe that consequences must happen to prevent this occurrence from happening in the future.
Of course, we can only deter if people know that there are consequences for bad behavior.
Absolutely.
Another thing you flagged, which is very interesting, is the unprofessional conduct of security agents. You said this remains a threat to the peaceful elections, but we had the representative of the Commissioner of Police there. He's reassuring the public and political parties. When you say unprofessional conduct of the security agents, what exactly are you talking about?
In 19 LGAs, we deployed over 219 monitors, and these monitors have come back to say most of the apprehension beyond the non-state actors' activities who are likely to intervene is the fact that their attitude and the conduct of police might also aggravate some level of response from the citizens. And we notice very clearly that there is a need to provide some level of democratic policing culture in terms of election management. Yes, the police has largely migrated from what it used to be in terms of professionalism. They have scaled up to a large extent, but you cannot have everything entirely covered. Out of every 12, there will always be a Judas, and we are hoping that that Judas would need to be exposed. And we know too well that if you have provided the rules of engagement for the election, how well are you also monitoring to ensure that those who go contrary, because again, the use of excessive force have been flagged, the issue of unprofessional conduct from personnel, and you know too well that for every action there is also an equal and opposite reaction. This is already an environment where people don't have trust and confidence in the institution of the state. Anything that is likely going to trigger any sort of response is also something that we must actually stay very far away from.
I know in your previous report, you also talked about misinformation and hate speech. I think it's also highlighted here about hate speech. I'm not so sure, but you have highlighted misinformation and hate speech.
Absolutely.
How do we counter that? Because you highlighted the role of the media. But before you even come to that, Anambra State has one of the lowest voter turnout when it comes to elections. The voter apathy rate is very high. And that's the incumbent, who is also a candidate in the election, as highlighted in recent times. With all of these concerns you have raised, do you fear that we might be seeing a repetition of voter apathy in this forthcoming election, and then the misinformation and hate speech?
Absolutely. Apathy is likely going to play in, and that is because people are still very much afraid. The template within the space is still not very convenient for people to come out and suggest the confidence they have in the state. And what we have raised in terms of misinformation is actually a weapon that we must actually pay a lot of attention to, even as we go into the general elections. And you know too well that digitalization of our electoral process is something that has also become very strategic, and those who are also hell-bent into making sure that they twist existing narrative have also stepped up their games. And one of the things that we have also raised with this concern is the fact that even currently in Anambra, it is very important to pay some attention to what we regard as the data boys. These are guys who wake up and sleep trying to manipulate information to change the narrative in the minds of citizens. And I tell you very clearly, one of the reasons why apathies are also there is also because they have also fabricated fear in the minds of the people that tendencies are there that conflict will break out. So this in itself also allows people to stay back, and that offer of opportunity for those who want to manipulate the process to have a free way to do so. So as we even go beyond Anambra into Osun, Ekiti and the 2027 election, it is very important to use diffuse and flag some level of attention into how we contain, prevent, and deter misinformation as a weapon in the hand of the political class. One thing is very fundamental.
Yeah.
Of all the transformation we have seen within the electoral value chain, the political class is the only one that has refused to transform. And that is because they have seen the traditional space as the only way to flourish, because it offers them the career in their political
The benefits from it.
Absolutely. That's the just issue.
Okay, it looks like there's a lot of work to go around, from the EFCC to the police to the political class particularly,
Absolutely.
and even the citizens. Thank you so much for the work you do.
Thank you very much
Dr.
for having me.
Salaudeen Hashim is the Director of Programs, Clean Foundation. Thank you.
Thank you for having me.